Hey everyone, welcome to Shunya One, episode 139. We are here with yet another very interesting conversation. I mean, just when we had uh, huge company last week,
Uh-huh.
today we have a brand new company, but also someone who's raised like
Brands.
a
Yeah.
massive amount of venture capital, whole new business. Like it's just crazy. It's a whole new domain, actually. What do you
I,
think,
I I
Amit?
remember I remember when we got on the pre-call, right? And you called it a series A instead of a seed. And it sounded like it should be a series A, not a seed, right? So
Yes,
yeah, absolutely.
exactly.
And really exciting business too, right? I mean, like the idea of I mean, like conglomerates in some sense have gone a little out of style, and it's become more like being focused in what you do. But I like the idea
Exactly.
of like a business controlling a bunch of different like synergistic businesses. It's great that it's coming back in its own way.
Yeah, yeah, and of course, for everyone listening, we're talking to Bhavna Suresh, the co-founder of Ten Club, one of the hottest new uh, roll-up or thrashier style businesses that you might have already have heard of in the market. And yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be a really interesting chat, getting to know exactly what this domain is about, and of course, how this is poised to be a very interesting play. So
Yeah.
let's jump in. All right, hey everyone, welcome to the show, Bhavna. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you. How are you guys doing in
Lovely.
Bombay monsoons?
We're sitting
Well,
and watching rain. That's what I'm doing, at least.
Best life ever.
yes, the life now for the next couple of months for sure. From the looks of it, now it's finally started. We're in that now. This is real monsoon phase.
Yeah.
So yes, we
So
can
we're,
only
we're,
hope
st-
that
we're
this
still
broadcast and this, yeah.
we're still talking about the monsoon and not the pandemic and being stuck at home, because when people talk about months these days, I'm still confused. Like everyone's still talking about the last few months of the lockdown. We're still guessing.
Does
We're
it
still doing that.
does it matter anymore? Does anything matter? Is what I wonder.
You sound like somebody who's not stepped out in a while, because if you have stepped out, you
Yes.
realize that skills have started deteriorating dramatically. So it really does matter. I think a
Okay.
couple of weeks ago,
Okay.
I stepped out and met people for the first time, and it took me a while. I was like, oh my God, five people. How do I make eye contact without a screen?
No, actually having to
Love.
talk to people in a way which is not like so directly point to point, right? Generally, when you're talking to people on the phone or you're talking to people on a Zoom screen or something, it's like, this is what we need to talk about. Let's talk about this. And then after you might do a minute or two of hi, hello, right? But now when you actually meet people, you actually got to do small talk again. And
Oh
that's proven to be a
man.
little bit of a challenge.
Eye contact. I'm telling you, it's eye
I'm
contact.
I'm
It's
I'm dreading it. I
amazing.
am dreading it. So far, I'm gonna refrain from uh, anything for the next few months for sure. Thanks to monsoon, thanks to pandemic, thanks to home scenes, whatever you might call it. So I'm gonna push this problem away like we do with most things for a couple of
Yeah, yeah,
months.
brush it away.
But
Makes sense.
but thanks so much for being here. Thank you, for coming to talk to us today. There's a lot which I want to talk to you about, and of course, I could introduce you in a number of ways, given that you guys have been in the news lately with so many for so many different reasons, right? But Ten Club is poised to do some amazing things. You guys have obviously raised a ton of money, probably hit a record on the Series A amount, and but you yourself have been an entrepreneur. You've been part of a lot of global sort of organizations. Could you tell us a little bit of your sort of backstory to set the context of why you got into what you're doing today?
Sure. Correction, it was not Series A, it was Seed. So we
Oh
strategically called
wow!
it Seed. We were like, it's first step. There are many more steps to go, but this is the first one. Yeah, I'm sure you've had enough people come on the show and tell you the truth, right? I don't think many of us really strategically plan what we're doing. It's one day at a time. The last 2.5 years have been quite a blur. Prior to 10 Club, I was in the Philippines building Southeast Asia's real estate platform. That happened by chance. Prior to that, I was so 10 Club was my third business. third venture. My first venture was Style Bank, which I tried launching out of Paris for India. I was trying to build India's Rent the Runway in 2014. I think I was just enamored by the concept. I was enamored by potentially being in the fashion capital of the world. And I was like, how do I bring this to India at the right price? And that was maybe the 24-year-old in me who wanted to wear all of those clothes. And I was like, there's no way I can afford to buy all of this. How can people like me kind of wear a lot more of it in India? I think that was my first ever entrepreneurial sprint, right? I think the whole idea of when I look back at it, I think the same investors that I spoke to today, I'd spoken to them in 2014. I think my conversation was so dramatically different. And it was interesting that, I mean, we kind of knew each other and there's been an evolution on both fronts to some extent. So I think that was
Mhm.
exciting this time around. But yeah, 2014 was that building a fashion rental platform for India. I think operationally we struck ground. We didn't raise as much money. I think fundraising is a journey in itself that you have to learn to do. But operationally it didn't
Yeah.
work. So my second venture was setting up a real estate platform for Southeast Asia, the Moody, which I grew over a period of 4.5 years. Um, for those of you who know Southeast Asia, I think like India, it's a little hard to monetize. I would say a little harder than India to monetize, really. So for
Mhm.
me, I think after the first journey, the second one was it wasn't really a GMV play. It was how do you build something sustainably, but knowing that you have to monetize to sustain long term, right? So I think it was always something from a business point of view that I was very fascinated with. I think while I enjoy watching the GMV play, while I enjoy hyper growth, I think for me it's always how do you make profit and how can you sustain yourself in the bargain. So yeah, built that over a 4.5 year period. We turned profitable. We've now become Philippines' largest real estate platform with a pretty significant presence in in Indonesia. We got acquired by the end of
Yeah.
2019. We got acquired. So just before the start of the pandemic, I left to kind of celebrate the acquisition. Come Jan 2020, when the acquisition happened and we got locked out of the Philippines, so I could never go back. So managed an entire
Mhm.
M&A process through a pandemic, finished it in September, stepped down, after four
Wow.
and a half years, handed it over. And yeah, I think life just hit, we were it's one of those phases where you have time and you're like, oh no, what do I do? I'm in the middle of a pandemic. I have time. And happened to be in Dubai where I met my co-founder. Today, his name is Joel. He's an American investor who's been watching the entire roll-up play happen globally. So in September last year, two weeks after I stepped down from the movie, I said I was going to take a long sabbatical and chill. But 10 days later, met Joel, and he introduced me to this phenomenon. I'd heard about it. I think I was not paying too much attention to it. And we started talking about it. He was talking to me, obviously, from the lens of Southeast Asia, because that was a market I was more familiar with. And then we started looking at India, and we spent 3 months together just understanding how this would potentially play out in India. And there was not too
Mhm.
much noise. I think India is not an M&A market. People don't, especially in the small scale stage, there is no M&A activity. So it was interesting, right? There was an American, there was me, and we were trying to have conversations one on one with a bunch of sellers to understand the landscape, understand the ecosystem, understand scale. And we were trying to figure out how this could play out in India if there was really an opportunity. And I think India is that market where everybody says no first. So everybody said no. The first 3 months, it almost was like nobody was ready. Everybody was like, this is never going to happen. This is not an opportunity in India. It's too small. And I think cut 6 months in, life changed. I think the same, whether it was from a capital point of view, because again, we did go raise $40 million in seed, but 40 million for us will be spent very quickly. It's not something that we can use for a
Wow.
long period of time. We will spend that money in the next few months, right? Because a lot of that money is
Wow.
going to be used to acquire businesses. So for us, I keep calling it seed because it's the money that we use to prove a concept. And then we'll have to kind of
Of
go
course.
raise a fair amount of money on top of that. So this business is capital intensive. We needed to find the right founders to work with. And it's been a journey. We've spoken to about 600 different sellers now in the span of 10 months. We've actually identified our first 10 businesses. We've started already rolling up a couple of businesses. And I think the
So
third pillar to this whole thing is people, right? We had to build a pretty large organization to support all of this roll up.
So, could you explain roll up to people a little bit? Because I think, as you mentioned, like it's something that was unfamiliar to you. I think that it's something that some people know about, but it's not really widely known, right? So,
Yeah,
what does roll
it's
up
not
mean, right?
it's not as common as food tech or fintech yet, but the way you said it, roll up economy, like creator
Yeah.
economy, clearly is a thing. So yes,
Yeah, so I think India calls it Thrasio, which is really funny. When you talk
Thrasio
to the
style.
Thrasio,
Yes.
yeah, like I think Thrasio is getting way too much PR. Great for them, like full respect. And I'm like, man, what it would be to be a Carlos today and be like the whole world calls their business a Thrasio. It's interesting, but I think to give everybody around the world you credit, not just N Club, it's I think the roll up model is anything that you can identify. You identify a business, you acquire it, and you operate it. That entire journey is called a roll up, right? So how do you roll a business into your portfolio and become a cohort company? The advantage here is that a lot of these marketplace first businesses have very similar operating needs. They have very similar functions and departments and teams that they require. So the understanding is, as one unit, how do you start scaling at hyper velocity as such? But also, I think the inherent need for a roll-up model globally is they're profitable, right? Again, there can be different versions to this. Different people are going to try building it differently. I think India's kind of stuck with two words, D2C and Thrasio. I think Thrasio's
Yeah.
replacement is a roll-up model, and D2C is not everyone trying to build this is kind of trying to acquire D2C businesses. I think a lot of us are looking at digitally native businesses, right? So it's not that we're trying to acquire a direct to consumer business. It's more how is it a digitally enabled business that we think there's growth and we kind of acquire it. Use too many words there. Do you want me to break anything down further?
No, no,
I
D2C we actually know.
Yeah.
D2C
Yeah.
we know. And that's to be honest, that's also like a bundle of things, right? But
Yeah.
I think what people now understand is at least you're buying direct from a brand. In
Yeah.
this case, and just to sort of
Yeah.
dig a little deeper into the concept of the business, you still are keeping those brands as is, right? You still sort of, or at least unless you intend to rebrand it, you still want to sell operate those businesses seemingly independently for the consumer. The consumer doesn't know that these are all sort of rolled up into one big conglomerate.
Yeah.
And is that
No,
intentional?
exactly.
Is that like the objective?
Yeah, so I think the understanding here is it's two front, right? I think to the end consumer, you potentially acquire a business or partner with a founder to be able to piggyback and grow a business to a point where it's taken, right? None of these businesses are being bought at very early stage. It's being bought at a stage where potentially, it's like an exit opportunity for a seller, where a lot of us who've been entrepreneurs know that there are only a couple of options for you to kind of have a liquidity event, right? It's either a public event, which is very, very difficult in an emerging market, or it is to potentially get acquired, right? Or there is a massive VC round where there's a secondary play for a founder to make some kind of money. Those are the only options
Yeah.
from a founder's lens, right? And I think what was happening, at least in India, was there was so much noise around funding, and when you kind of break it down at a founder liquidity, that's a big question mark, right? A lot of us know how little money actually ended up coming
Yeah.
to the founders and how much of it was burnt in the process of building a business, right? So I think this is a
Right.
parallel lane, and that is what excited me. Right? I think for me, while I think it's a different breed of consumers or entrepreneurs who kind of take a VC route, I think for me, what was really exciting about this play was this is actually helping founders innovate faster, kind of get to market faster. You're kind of rewarded for the work that you do the first 2 to 3 years, which honestly is the hardest period, right? If you can survive 2 to 3 years of your first build, you've kind of found a niche, right? And
Mhm.
then after that is about scale. And I think that's where we come in, right?
Mm.
We're like, hey, if you can break out and find that white space and break it and take it to a particular level in a category, then you start bringing in efficiencies and processes and, the right talent to kind of zoom this out and kind of really grow it. And it necessarily doesn't just have to be capital, right? I think that's where we come from. We're saying capital is important, but you also need the right processes and you also need the right people. And if your people and processes can be shared and your capital can be used well, do we all have to destroy too much wealth in the process? I think that's
Mm.
that's the idea.
And is this also something unique to sort of the challenges in the sort of consumer goods space, or is it like you said, any digital native business? Like, uh, has can this be done for, let's say, a content company also versus just a physical goods company, or is that opportunity arbitrage not so great there versus is it much better in
Spotify, that's what they're doing.
yeah.
No, it's what they're
Yeah,
doing.
I'm
I
so
mean,
yeah, I think it's happening. It's an M&A play at the end of the day with operating capabilities, right? I think that's, and it's again, a roll-up model is being spun out in different places. There's a huge F&B play from what we hear right now that's kind of spinning out, at least in India, not as
yeah,
much outside. I
cloud
think what's
kitchens.
happening globally,
Yeah,
yeah, there's a lot of that, and it makes sense, right? I think the idea is it's basically giving rise to, it's incentivizing entrepreneurs to come out there and build, right? Because 2 3 years you potentially have an exit opportunity and you get to become, so it's a two-pronged way to look at it, right? The brand that you build continues to be the brand it is, and hence you get to see it grow
yeah,
with the right team, and you get the opportunity for a financial benefit, right? So from an individual's point of view, both kind of will be achieved, and it's a less risky way to build, right? It's basically saying, I start off, but if 10 of us are going to try building and competing with each other, is that better than kind of joining hands and building something big together? I think that's the lens that most people are looking at our place at. And even within all of the people trying to build up the role of play in India, I think each of us have a very different thesis, right? I mean, it may not seem very clear right now because I think all of us, it kind of comes down to the kind of businesses we roll in, right? Whether it kind of breaks down at a category level, whether it comes down to the kind of consumers
right.
we're trying to target. All of us are going to try picking our little space and we're going to operate in that space, right? And I think that's what's interesting about this play. It's not a one player model at all, right? While I think there's a lot of noise in the media and everyone's trying to bet on who's going to win, the US today
Yeah,
has about 22 different more businesses building this, and all highly profitable and all growing aggressively, right?
right.
And we truly, while I think the US is a different sized market, but I think that's what's interesting about this model, right? It's not one. There can be many of us operating at different scales, different capabilities in different sectors. Like the cloud kitchen one is new now. I think there is a different one that's going to apply for F&B, a different one for lifestyle, a different one for home. And I think that's how this is going
Yeah.
to play out. Will it kind of get down
It's
into
about
the
how you,
content play? Yeah,
yeah,
it's
how you
basically
pool
just,
your resources or how you pool your skills, I guess.
yeah, I think it takes a little bit of the taboo around selling your business, which I think was there a few months ago. I think the when people were not very sure that this was okay, I think in the next few months, or once there are a few more entrepreneurs who sell and we celebrate it a little bit more, I think that context of
So
selling your business is not going to be that hard.
th- that's actually a that's I mean, I want to this small
Yeah,
detail on that as well, because you said you spent some time in India trying to sort of see if this was even a, something people were okay to do. And
yeah,
again, anecdotally, what I do know is like the impression I have is the same, right? That most Indian entrepreneurs, or not the new age ones, let's not ignore the ones maybe who are current with global themes and they are looking for liquidity. But the original traditional Indian business owner is also a sort of, hey, I want to build this as a lifestyle business, right? Most of them don't even start companies with a venture in mind. They start them with like profit, like you said earlier, and a lifestyle business in mind, which is a sustainable one that'll give them money for forever. How do you get those guys to convert, or do you or is that not the audience you're looking for? You're looking only for the folks who are out there to sort of create brands and exit.
yeah. So I've spoken about this a few times. So I think it's coming of age of an ecosystem, right? I think it's not my nuance to this is, if it was 2 decades ago, the concept of venture capital wasn't even there, right? I mean, it was not even a
Right.
concept that people thought about. It was, you start a business, you bootstrap it, you run it the way you have to. Next, kind of open the doors for debt, right? You could go to a bank and take a loan and kind of grow your business. That was an opportunity. I think a little over a decade ago is where venture capital even started to kind of open up as an opportunity and as a concept. And now it's become very acceptable, right? Where taking venture capital money also was, I think, a little bit of a taboo a few years ago, right? It was, why don't you just bootstrap this, and why do you have to take external money? Why do you have to dilute? And that's been normalized a little bit, right? And I think we're the
Hmm.
fourth door, right? And I think the fourth door can only come to play when the ecosystem is growing. If the ecosystem's too tiny, there is no option for to have so many lanes. I think
Yeah.
we're so that's what I'm saying. I think in a span of 6 months, we have seen how different things have gotten, right? From no, I mean, I think when nobody else is having this conversation, obviously the first instinct is, who are these people? They want to buy my business 100%. They're going to pay me money. There was a valuation disconnect.
Yeah.
Everybody was trying to get us to value their business on an X of top line because they were valuing the business like a venture capital, and we had to be like, no, 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 this is not how it works. There's a concept of present value in your valuation, which means this is the capital in your pocket today, not 5 years from now. This is for you and
Yeah.
not for the business. So, I think there was a lot of that correction. And what's changed in a mass span of 6 months, I think, and I think this is what's beautiful about India, right? The same people who had said no have come back with the most innovative ways to make a deal happen. And they're like, nahi,
Wow.
aise karo, and aise karo, and then we'll do it. And we're like, okay, great, let's do it. So I think it's the start of something new. I think
Yeah.
with India, the differentiation compared to potentially the US, and this we were very clear about, is I don't think we can run a business without the founder, right? So for us, we'd find a way to kind of work with the founder, and that's where the founder becomes very important for us. So for at least at 10 Club, the founder chemistry is a really important play. So we do acquire the business, but the
Got it.
founder comes and becomes part of our team and works with us for a particular amount of time. And that may vary, right? Some founders work
Got
with
it.
us for a year, while some founders and us get along really well and have decided to be with us for the long haul.
Why 10 Club? What's what's unique about the name? And I know it's a very random question, but it's
No, I
it's
think it's
roll
a
up
very
economy is
relevant
new,
question.
so it's yeah.
No, I think it's a very relevant question, right? I think naming your venture is like naming your baby. It takes a little time, especially when you have multiple
Yeah.
co-founders. So yeah, we're three of us. I wish I had a more romantic story to tell. It's not a very romantic one. It's very structured. In these kind of businesses, when you kind of acquire a business, the back of hand calculation is the business has to grow 10x for you and the
Hmm.
founder and for everybody to kind of make the kind of wealth that you want to, or kind of the impact that you want to. And it was a number that we were landing up at more often than not, right? So if you acquire a business that's doing 10 crores annual revenue, you have to take it to 100 for everybody in the whole space to kind of be excited, and for all of us to actually create value, right? So that was the math. It was, most businesses have to be grown
Hmm.
10x, not in a span of year or 2 years. I think it is, again, because we're trying to grow sustainable businesses, it's over 36 to 48 months, right? So I think we put the goal in our name, and we said, it's lest we forget. So that's
All
why we're
right.
10 Club.
All right. Wonderful. And to get it, sorry, Amit, did you have a question?
Yeah, I actually, but you can go ahead. I mean, like, my question is not really related to this. It's just kind of take us into a different direction altogether. So please, just if you have a follow up, go ahead.
No, no, that's
No.
what the name was about. I actually just
Okay. All
wanted
right.
to check on
So
that.
I kind of, so I wanted to ask, like, again, we spoke a little bit about roll up and stuff like that, right? The kind of this, what, so what are the categories that you're looking at, right? Because I mean, like, as we said, there are a lot of different categories out there, and
Yeah.
I know that. I read that there is a preference towards e-commerce kind of stuff and that kind of sellers and those kinds of things. But are you looking at specific categories, or are you looking at like just e-commerce generally, or is there like what are you all looking at?
Yeah. So e-commerce is, I would kind of reduce that even further, right? At least at
Okay.
10 Club, we're going marketplace first, right? So
Okay.
we're not even looking at businesses that are only doing brand.com.
Mhm.
We're looking at a
Hmm.
lot of businesses that, so we've simplified it, right? I think for us, brand.com is a different play. It's
Mhm.
you need to acquire customers and you need to create brand value, and there's a lot of brand conversation around it. I think it's not that we're not having those conversations. What we've started with, and the businesses that we've kind of partnered with initially, are a lot of businesses that get 80 to 90% of their traction from potentially an Amazon or a Flipkart, right? So it's a marketplace first business. And the good thing here is, once you gain a particular traction, we step in to help them branch out to other avenues, right? So I think that's a different
Okay.
skill, and I think That's the skill that we think we'll be good at. So that's a question. Categories, honestly, we're not very fussy, right? The idea is we're having conversations and we're trying to see synergies. But for us, being profitable is really important, right? Any
Okay.
business that has not tried focusing on margins is not an active conversation we're having yet, right? And I think it's also
Okay.
changing with a lot of founders, right? Because a lot of founders were out there trying to raise VC money, and hence they were trying to grow top line aggressively and not really focusing on margins. But what we've come to realize is a lot of businesses can become profitable if they focus, and their focus kind of changes a little bit, right? And then it becomes an exciting conversation for us, right? So at this point, we're talking to everybody and we're trying to see where we can help them turn profitable and kind of focus on margins and growth, right? I think a couple of businesses that we've not done is we've not done fashion actively, right?
Okay.
We think it's one large segment and it's a really huge one. I think it's an interesting play, but we're looking at everything else that is, but not fashion. Fashion only because we think it's a little seasonal, and you need very, you need specialized capabilities to do fashion, and we're not ready yet for that, right? So we're focusing on everything else that's not fashion, and then maybe in a few months we will start actively looking at fashion.
All right.
I had one other question which you cannot answer if you don't want to answer, but
Sure.
what's the typical, like, what's the typical ticket size of a acquisition that you're making, and if you could expand on that versus the kind of revenue that and again, this entirely if you want to answer however you're comfortable. This might be too specific.
No, I'm happy to answer it. You know, so here's the thing. In Jan, when we started having conversations, we were looking at businesses that were doing, I'll talk in crores and not in dollars. We were
Sure.
talking to businesses that were doing 5 or 6 crores annually, and we
Mhm.
thought those were sizable businesses. But today we're talking to businesses that do 70, 80, 100 crores a year, right? So, I think the conversation is we don't look at it just from the size of the business, right? For us, it is what are you doing in revenue, of course, and then in relation to the category that you're operating in,
Hmm.
if there's any use for us to come in also, right? I mean, if we're going to come in and you're running a business beautifully and we don't believe we can optimize you in any way or we cannot help you in any way, it makes no sense for us to put money forward to acquire the business, right? For us, at the
Right.
end of the day, we only put capital upfront and say, hey, we're going to take this opportunity and we're going to partner because we truly believe we can bring value and grow this to a large
Mhm.
extent. Again, 10x rule, right? If you're not able to look at this business from a 10x growth point of view, it may not make sense for anyone, right? So I think that's
Right.
very clear. So when we're having conversations with people who do 50, 60 crores annually, it is because we truly believe together we can take this business to 500 or 600 crores in a period
Right.
of time, right? But for us, the valuation is always on a multiple on the EBITDA,
Mhm.
right?
Okay.
So a lot of the businesses that we talk to do about 15% at least in
Okay.
EBITDA, right? And those are
That's a
healthy business
pretty
margins.
large, yeah, that's a healthy margin for an e-commerce business, isn't it?
So that's a difference, right? I think people who intend to make it profitable, there's always an opportunity for it to be profitable. I think where
Mhm.
a lot of people lose money is in the CAC play when you're trying to deeply grow your business very quickly and you go after GMV and you lose too
Mhm.
much money in CAC is when your margins fall. Right. So a lot
Right.
of businesses that have found a moat and they're growing organically and sustainably, usually their margins are in this play. And
Mhm.
that's interesting for us, right? So anywhere
Mhm.
between 10-15% is what we look at. And it's always a multiple on that, right? So we pay about anywhere between 3 to 6, 5x of a multiple as an upfront commitment, right?
Okay.
Depending on how fast you're growing. And then for us, interestingly, depending on the founder and the founder's motivation, there is a revenue, there's a profit share that happens over a period of
Mhm.
time while we take care of everything else.
You always acquire, let's say, the entire business. Like, even though you, like you said, there's some models where there's profit sharing and whatnot, but the intention is to wholly own it and operate it, like you said.
Yeah, so for us, we've taken a stance saying 100% acquisition, right? Because I think that's what gives
Right.
the entrepreneur and founder the most value upfront,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
And I think the intention here is if you're getting that kind of liquid money today, It's only in your benefit.
Right.
And then it gets a little complicated, right? If you buy only X% of a business and 10 Club kind of continues to infuse growth capital, take care of all the manpower costs, take care of all the costs, and the value continues to grow. So I think it's a mix. We've tried keeping it clean for everybody, and we're like, hey, if we give you only 60% of the value today, we're taking away that present value from you. So the intention here is we try buying businesses 100% out. And then over a period of time, there is an earn out of sorts where the founder stays and actually benefits from the growth.
Got it. And see, you mentioned earlier that your focus area is now marketplace businesses. I have a tangential question around that because the marketplace businesses are obviously the ones which sell primarily on my marketplaces. That's what you meant, right? Not the ones which are e-com marketplaces themselves.
Yeah.
So if this,
yeah, I think for me, we say marketplace businesses first because we've only seen margins in those businesses. Anyone
right,
trying to build
right,
independently, our theory, we've not come across anybody who's done it organically and not kind of branched out onto the marketplace for it to be
right,
profitable, right? I think that's the only thing.
right.
Are we having conversations with independent players? Of course we are, but it's the same pace, right? It kind of comes back to, hey, we were building for GMV, and maybe profitability is
Sure.
2 years away, so it gets a little hard.
So my question was, the ones which do sell on marketplaces, obviously you're saying they're profitable, and we see these brands everywhere. So many brands have sort of literally been found on Amazon or anywhere else, right? And then they become the D2C. We identify them as direct to
Yeah,
consumer brands
yeah,
afterwards.
yeah.
But what about the threat which actually was also, which still seems to loom for those brands, like how Amazon does Amazon Basics, and you think,
Yeah.
what if Amazon Basics does the same thing? Was that the original concept of what roll up is, and now you've sort of taken that aside, or is that threat still there, or how do you mitigate it, or does your
Yeah.
additional backing help them mitigate that?
I think it's multifold, right? I mean, this is a very layered question. So I think all of us have our little theory
I'm
around
sorry,
this, right?
if you
No,
can
no, no.
indulge me.
I'm happy to. I'm happy to. I think, but your guess is as good as mine. I think what we've decided and the call that we've taken at 10 Club is, at the end of the day, Flipkart, Amazon, they're all marketplaces, right? For them, a lot of their survival is also around third-party sellers. They do need merchants outside while they continue to have private labels of their own. They
Private
can
label,
never
yeah.
only be a private label provider, right? And I think there's enough of a regulatory question around if this is possible or not around the world, including India. So I think while they're trying to figure out this answer themselves, I think the piece that we take back is there is always a deep merchant play, and that is what we're banking on, right? Where X% can potentially always go to a private label, and it's a battle we cannot control, right? But I think the piece here is with us and players like us, we will always be the top performing third-party sellers on these platforms, right? I think the people who potentially are at threat are the long tail merchants, right? And for us, that is not a concern. So I think that's a play. I think there's going to be so much of a regulatory change there that it's something that none of us are trying to second
Right.
guess. Where, like, it's even in the US and places where they've tried questioning this, and it's been a question mark for a lot of players. I think they've all come past it, and they're like, there's place for everybody. And if you're constantly getting better and doing better, and you're coming on top, maybe there will be somebody, they will eat a little portion of your share, but will they ever get 100% of it? I think the answer is no. Right. So I think that's the play. That's why there's also a spin-off of potentially launching brand.com, right? I mean, it is important to kind of segue into that. So for us, we believe we come at a point where some of these founders are top selling providers on an Amazon and Flipkart and are on that verge of breaking out to kind of go independent. And we want to be part of that going independent journey because we want to do that organically. If you don't do that organically, very quickly you'll start eating into your margins, and all the value that you've created kind of gets lost. So I think those are the kind of businesses that we're looking for. We're looking for people who've come to that pivot point and then they're like, okay, now let's go on further together.
Got it. Interesting. And Thanks for answering that, because that's what we've seen, that we've seen the private label thing happen. Even, by the way, even in the homegrown marketplaces, like we've seen that in like the grocery folks and so on, right? I mean, eventually you try to be a marketplace and you realize the margins are in being a private label operator and stuff like that. Uh,
Yeah.
Quick follow up is separate to this. Now that you guys obviously have raised, you yourselves are venture funded, and obviously that means you obviously have some sort of liquidity event planned for yourself as well, right? Is this just too many layers for just how funding and value gets created? Because the same VCs who are funding you could have funded those guys directly, but obviously now they're doing that through you. So I get
Yeah.
the efficiencies of scale, but what's an exit for you? Basic, simple, sort
What's
of
an
roundabout
exit
way
for
to ask
us?
the same question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No. What's an exit opportunity for us? I think. I mean, there's a Thrasio setting example, right? I mean, they're getting ready to SPAC
Mm.
sometime soon. So I think a public event is very
Yeah.
clear for them,
IPO.
right? I think with Zomato setting that ground for a lot of players in India, I think for us, there is hope, right? I think for a young venture thinking of going public in India was quite a big. It was a question. I think for us, very
Mhm.
clearly, that's our route, right? I think there's a constant conversation about being profitable because I think that is the right way to go public. Again, in my books, right? And I
Right.
think for us, the playbook that we have ensures that we continue to remain margin positive. And for all of us, I think that's the focus. It's will get too expensive for anybody else very quickly, right? So I think the way is if we can build this the right way and do it sustainably over the next few years, I think going public is definitely the clear outcome. And then there are parallel
Yeah.
conversations, right? There are large private equity firms that want to get into this space, but it's too risky as a conversation for any of them right now. I mean, these businesses are
Right.
too small. But working with partners like us makes it a lot more exciting, and you become a vertical. So I think there is that as a conversation. So there's strategic mergers that are very, very exciting as an opportunity. Going back to our funding cycle, I think what's interesting about all of us is we're not just venture backed, right? We're venture backed and debt backed. So I think we've taken two options and
Hmm.
fused them and become the third option, right? So we're a hybrid of sorts, and that's what's exciting. And I think what needs to be remembered, and we get this question a lot, right, is isn't it competition? Is this competition with the venture world? And I think the answer is clearly
Yeah.
no. The venture world funds such a small segment of the market. I think we potentially become the offset saying, the venture world will back a few players and they will kind of look for hyper growth, right? For them, it is the 1 in 10 option that succeeds. For us, we don't have that
Yeah.
play, right? For us, it is every business that rolls in. There is no, you can't, it's not a game of dice here, right? I think for us, a lot of them have to turn profitable because we are putting money to it, right? So for us, we're making
Yeah.
our bet and 100% of our bets have to work, right? So I think that's the difference
Yeah.
here.
The VCs have basically outsourced a lot of their plans to you, from the sound of it. They're saying, "Oh, great! Now we don't have to worry about 10 of these companies. Let's just worry about one and give them all the money."
Nice. Yeah. Let's hope. Yeah. We had Fireside on our side backing us very early, so it was very interesting.
Very cool. Very cool. So, I mean, Bhavna, what next? I mean, I'd love to like get your sort of closing notes on what does the next 18 months odd typical, or
18
maybe
months.
sooner.
Wow.
Clearly, you no,
No,
because you
I
said
think in
seed.
our,
Typically, seeds last
yeah.
that much, but you said yourself that it won't. So I'm sure you guys are going to be like in triple digit million Series A or something like that very soon. But what does the
Yeah. So,
next rollout happen for you?
yeah. So, like I said, I think the first 6 months was just wrapping our head around where things lie, where the multiples lie, getting the market a little excited, realizing that we're not going to take people's money and run away. There was a lot of that also with founders where we're like, we're not going to take your business and run away. We're a proper venture. So I think all of that has been established. I think while India has a lot of like entrepreneurial spirit, there's a lot of like fear in a lot of us, right? Because there are so many gray areas. Everybody's constantly worried about who's going to cheat whom. So I think that's kind
Wow.
of
Yeah.
been taken. No, it's true, right? It's
Yep.
everyone's always thinking about this deal seems too good. What is the catch? So I think the idea is I think those are
Zero
coming from
trust
early.
economy. Yeah.
Zero trust, and I really hope that changes quick enough, right? I think all of us have to make a little bit of an effort of saying, it's at least in our business, right? We have LOIs that get signed, right? Where we sign letter of intent, and usually a lot of them have exclusivity clauses in them because, after you
Yeah.
sign an LOI, there is a deep process that all of us follow. But people keep hunting for deals in that period, right? And
Yeah.
it's quite
Yeah.
funny. We're like, man, this has to be a win-win for all of us. Otherwise, it's not taking money and walking. This is we have to work together from here. So I think all of those challenges, I think we've kind of come past a little bit. Like I said, we have 10 businesses now, and over the next few months, we're going to start operating all of them. That we want to put our head down and really operate. And while we operate, I think we're having hundreds of conversations to see which businesses kind of complement these businesses that we have. And yeah, I think that's the play. We've just started growing our team. We have a 25 member really senior team. So we went where we said we'll go unlike a lot of startups and not go junior, but go hire all the generals first. So
Wow.
we've got really, really, really senior folk who've joined us, and I believe who know way more than any of us, right? And like deep supply chain capabilities being built out, deep, sourcing procurement capabilities being built out because that was what was going wrong. And the last 18 months, we realized supply chain for India was really, really broken because of the lockdown. So there's a lot of work going there
Yeah.
that needs to be done. So that's going to be our next 6 months. And I think if we do all of this, the A, B, C, all of that will come.
Nice. Nice. And where do you want to do a shout out to where people can maybe reach out to whoever's listening here? Are you on Twitter or LinkedIn is better? Where people can look up your website, whatever.
Yeah, so we have our website and we're a very small team. And for those of you who've reached out to me on LinkedIn, I'm always awake. I'm always replying. Like I get messages where 30 seconds is a reply. So I think that's the story with everybody. We're having all conversations, and I think no conversation is big or small right now. And the idea is if it's not time to do something together now, I'm sure in 6 months it is. So yeah, we're always happy to have a conversation. I'm not on Twitter, not very big on Twitter. I've been forced to come on Twitter, but I think Twitter has too many opinions and I can't handle it. But LinkedIn is a more safer space for me, so I'm always on LinkedIn.
Cool. Also, I'd just
Perfect.
like to remind everybody really quickly, please do a rating or a review wherever you're listening to this. It is massively helpful. So if you're on Apple or if you're on Spotify or if you're on Castbox, wherever you're listening to this, just please do a rating for the podcast.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much, Bhavna. This was enlightening, to say the least. And of course, uh, like massive, massive congratulations on this, on just the sheer ambition of this. I mean, it's amazing. Kudos to you and the whole team. Uh, I'm
Thank you.
sure you guys will leave your mark, needless to say. So, and look forward
Thank
to the
you.
next 6 months and more. We'll be watching for sure.
Thank you. Thank you. We're working really
Awesome.
hard, so hopefully everything falls into place. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
IVM.